America, it's time for some straight talk. You love your phone. Look at you. You hardly put it down. But you don't love that expensive wireless plan, do you? So what if I told you can keep that phone network and number 2 for a lot less? Well, this is me telling you. It's time to switch to Straight Talk, guys. Bring your own phone and get unlimited plans starting at just $45 a month on America's largest, most dependable 4G LTE networks. Straight Talk Wireless. Only at Walmart.
Savings may vary. Please refer always to the latest terms and conditions of service at straighttalk.com.
Here we are. We are back and better than ever, and we are almost halfway home for the ESPN Fantasy Football Marathon, helping get you ready for your fantasy draft. And one more reminder, you can sign up at ESPN.com or on the ESPN Fantasy Football app. We are Mike and Mike. We're presented by Progressive Insurance. Our guests appear on the Shell Pennzoil Performance line and go like on a day we could all use some. This is going to be a lot of fun.
Yeah, it is. The only thing, it started with a little aggravation. About 20 minutes ago, I was down in Fantasy Island with my son Mike and Sarah Spain, and I had to bail Mike out of jail.
I saw it again.
It's like for the second time in his life.
It's like deja vu all over again.
I got the call at 3:15 when he was a freshman in college. I got it again today because Sarah Spain in her opulent house that we saw at the beginning of Fantasy Island said all her money is tied up in offshore accounts, so she didn't have the money to bail Mike out. So, because Mike got mouthy with the cop Schefter, I taught him, offer, a picture, offer some tickets. And then as he said, my next show is going to be on the radio, so I've been knocked down a peg, and, that didn't work anymore.
It's insanity what's going on here. So in case you're all wondering, if you're just waking up and saying, what the heck is going on here? Yes, you're about right. Yeah. What the heck is going on here? But the good news is it's a fantasy football marathon. This is our number 12. It will be 28 in total. So we got off easy because by the end of the day, they're going to be loopy beyond anyone's ability to comprehend. So the fact that we will have Sarah and Mikey in here every single hour doing whatever it is they'll be doing, it'll be more coherent than there's any chance it's going to be by about 6 o'clock tonight.
Without a doubt, but you're going to get great info on fantasy because this is fantasy mecca for these 28 hours. So as people are getting ready to do all they need to do with their drafts, and whether it's teams or however they're going to go about it, whatever kind of leagues they have, you're going to get the best information here. As you've been getting all along already, you have another entire day until this thing ends at 11 o'clock tonight. So
right.
Get your pens, get your papers, take your notes to make your team.
Yes, because everyone writes things down now with a pen and paper as opposed to
well,
get your laptop out, get your tablet, get this stuff ready here.
Aren't you the one that is so concerned about that people don't like text with the right
punctuation,
that stuff? Yeah.
Yes.
So I'm a little old school. You're a little old school, right?
I get that. Get out the chisel and you can start putting in. We're going to put it up on tablets at some point relatively soon. David Johnson, number 1 pick.
You done?
Get that in by the end of the show. We should have it. We'll release a scroll.
A couple things to be mocked about because the wife went to the Red Skeleton Museum last night.
We've had a fun week. Actually, Golick's wife continues. She's on the road again. She's out there walking for a good cause while your son is creating whatever mayhem he can possibly figure out around here at ESPN. One member of the Golick family is actually doing something that matters.
Yeah, worthwhile. She has a 18-mile walk and I think like a 24-mile bike ride. We'll get into more on that as she's on the road again, but we need to get you caught up on a few things.
That's exactly right. Let's start with off the top here. We're Mike and Mike, and let's begin. You heard it in the open there. Giancarlo Stanton has now hit more home runs than any Marlin in any season in baseball's history.
Yeah, he has 10 home runs in August, tying the Marlins single-month record with 12 home runs in July. First player in franchise history to hit 10 home runs back-to-back month. Recorded 5 of the 13 double-digit home run months in Marlins history. He has the most months with 10 home runs at 5. Sheffield has 3 months. He is as absolute hot as could be right now, knocking the ball out of the park. I'm really anxious to see where he ends up in something that we haven't, and we're not going to, there's not going to be this national buildup for it like it was when the home run, people cared about that number. But they see this big guy knocking the ball out of the park. Anytime you hear about home runs, everybody thinks about PEDs. It's never been associated with Stanton, even though he looks like a chiseled Greek god. But he's always been a large guy. As I said, the quarterback at Notre Dame that were teammates with my boys, Dane Christ, was a teammate of Stanton's when they were in high school. Dane was throwing to Stanton, and Dane said that dude looked like that in high school, and it just has gotten better and better as he's gotten older. So I'm really interested to see where this number goes for him.
Frank Thomas was another one like that. Some guys were just big when they were little.
Right.
And they're
exactly.
just naturally big. Stanton's a big guy. Thomas is a big guy. The problem is they put the home run, the steroid guys put the home run records in places that these guys aren't going to get. Giancarlo Stanton's not getting a 73.
No,
he's not on the list of options.
He's not. That's why yesterday I said 58. It would be the first time, I think, since 08 and Ryan Howard. If he got to 60, that's Sosa and Bonds back in 01. Those are more the reachable numbers. You're right. Those 70s are not going to be there.
Someday, maybe Aaron Judge will be getting there. He finally hit another home run yesterday, his first time this month.
Another large human being, but he has struggled since was really given credence to the, if you do the home run derby, it's going to throw
Everyone
things off.
mocked me. Yeah. Everyone yelled at me. Everyone made fun of me. And I said, don't let this kid go in the home run derby. He's a rookie. Don't let him mess with his swing. Give him a little rest.
I'm not.
What is he, hit 2 home runs?
Stan was in the home run derby. He was in it as well. Stan was in it. Stan's knocking the ball out of the park all the time.
He's been around forever. This is a young guy. He got out of his groove.
It has nothing to do with it. You know what? It is maybe some people figured him out a little bit. He had a hot first half. He did hit most of his home runs in Yankee Stadium. As a matter of fact, the one he hit yesterday was bringing his total home runs to 24 this season. It ties a major league record for most home runs by a rookie at home. I'm still not buying into that, as most baseball people aren't buying into that home run derby throwing off the swing.
Well, I mean, then most baseball people need to give me a call. What else do we have here off the top? Marvin Bagley III was going to be the best player in next year's college basketball free agency, whatever you want to call it, rankings. He was going to be the highest recruit in the 2018 season. And then a funny thing happened yesterday.
He decided to go to college instead. He was old enough too. Obviously, where he was in his career, he was able to do that, and he's going to Duke, which now gives Duke in 3 of the last 4 years the top prospect in the country. 2014 it was Jahlil Okafor. 2016 last year was Harry Giles, and this year it'll be Marvin Bagley III. So he's a guy. It was interesting because I hadn't heard as much about Bagley as you'd seen on social media, all the highlights of Zion Williamson, this kid that's been dunking all over the place. If Bagley had stayed in high school, he was the number 1, as you said. Zion was number 2. So now the Zion kid goes to the number 1 recruit because he is going to be a senior in high school as Bagley moves on to Duke, which Duke has 4 top 10 recruits in this class. So that's the highest since Kentucky in 2013 had 5 top 10 recruits.
Yep. So they are now clearly the favorite to win next year's college basketball national championship. The NBA released its schedule in its entirety yesterday. They will open October 17th. That's extraordinarily early for this league. And again, they're doing everything they can. I give them credit. I really do. I think Silver and give Michelle Roberts credit, everybody involved in this thing, they are doing what they can to create a schedule that will put the best players on the floor for as many games as possible. You know how I feel about resting. I cannot stand it. They're doing what they can to eliminate all of these back-to-backs and 3 games in 4 nights, as much of that as they possibly can.
The best thing about this, and we'll see the results of that, it will be very evident if players are still going to rest. Players are still going to rest, but the bottom line is for the league, I think, especially, and the union, obviously, that they're splitting revenue money in, and the TV money isn't going anywhere for a lot of years, but they still want to keep the TV partners happy, is those big marquee matchups on TV. They're trying to work it so that the big stars are going to be there. To me, the overriding story of this, Greenie, is the fact that how well the union and the league are working together. And that's something that, the most popular sport in the country, football, that hasn't happened for a while, and that's something that needs to happen. The direction basketball is going with that relationship can only be good for the sport.
Look, to be clear, when you have a salary cap, you are partners. You are in a partnership. Yep. The players and the owners are partners in the NBA as they are in the NFL. The only difference is in the NBA, they act like it.
Yep.
And in the NFL, they act like adversaries. And finally, the toxicology report that came back on Tiger Woods the night that he was found asleep behind the wheel of his car showed that he had 5 different drugs in his system at the time.
Yep, 2 different painkillers, 2 different sleep aids, and THC. It's the active ingredient in marijuana. Basically, what Tiger said is he was self-medicating to take care of his back issues, and now he because of all this, he's seeking professional help for it. He was trying to do it himself. Many athletes do that. I certainly did, and thank God I never had an issue with painkillers because I absolutely took enough of them in my career and post-career as well. And you think you know what you're doing. You think you've been doing it for a while, so you do it to how you think you do, and before you know it, sometimes in some situations you become dependent on them, and you're not doing it properly yourself. So that was the case, it seems, for Tiger Woods, who said at this point, and obviously the wake-up call is getting arrested and caught sleeping in your car on the side of the road, that you need some help.
He says he's been working with his doctors. He says they feel he's made significant progress. Look, I don't... You and I aren't friends with Tiger Woods. He used to appear on this show pretty regularly a long time ago before a lot of things in his life changed. There's a part of me, when I read the details of what's in his system, what was in his system, that's scary.
Yeah,
I mean,
sure
to have that many different things, Xanax and Ambien and Vicodin and all of that stuff at the same time. So I really do hope that he's doing better. Yeah. I really do hope that he's working with the appropriate people and helping him get that together to a manageable place. I mean, back pain is something I've never dealt with.
It's horrible.
You know more about it than I do.
Any kind of chronic pain that these anybody really, forget just athletes, it's just a world that I lived in. Whether you're playing, you take them so you can play and don't feel the pain, and then post-career, if you're still feeling the pain, you take them just to try and not have pain in everyday life, and it can get out of control. There's no doubt about it.
All right, that's Off the Top with Mike and Mike. It's presented by Progressive Insurance. Last year, over 3 million drivers switched to Progressive. Call or click today. Find out if you could save with Progressive Insurance. Schefter and Matt Berry will be in studio coming up together in about, where are we here? About 20 minutes. As you and I are not sitting in our usual space today, we have a little technical stuff, so I'm trying to find a clock. I just finally did.
There you go.
You know, I am such a creature of habit.
Yes, you are.
I'm so thrown out of, completely out of whack.
When they said we
had
an issue with what's behind the desk, and they're all trying to fix it and everything, and they said you're going to have to start the segment on the chair. You want to see a dude freak out. It was Greeny. How am I supposed to do a segment over there? What do I need over there? Can I take my computer over there? What am I supposed to do?
Well, when they told me I could take the laptop, I was ecstatic. I had it in my lap for a little while. Then God, Ray brought over a little table. So I feel a little better now because I had the laptop in my lap, and I was starting to get a little bit jittery here.
Watching you freak out is fun because I made sure I sat at the desk so you were over here trying to do your thing, and I was going to come over here at the last possible moment just to kind of add to your trepidation.
Where's Golick? Someone get me Golick. I'm all by myself over here. I don't know what's going on. I can't find a clock. For about a good 10 seconds there, I couldn't find a clock. Okay. We're Mike and Mike. Let's get down to business here. As obviously it is the Fantasy Football Marathon, and we will be chock full of fantasy football information for you today, particularly in the way of taking your questions. Tweet them on in, and Matt Berry will have answers, and Schefter. And again, Mikey and Sarah will be along with a whole bunch of fun. But we will be doing our show this morning as well. And so we'll begin with today being the day that all the expectation is that Zeke Elliott will officially file his appeal of his 6-game suspension. And the Fort Worth Star-Telegram yesterday had in a piece the strategy that will be used by Zeke's team in his appeal. And just a quick look at it. The team will argue the testimony given by his ex-girlfriend to the league was, quote, dishonest, and that she made a number of threats to, quote, ruin his career. The appeal will highlight text messages from his ex-girlfriend that encouraged another friend to lie to police about an alleged domestic assault in July of 2016. A reminder that Elliott was not charged with domestic violence in the allegation. The Columbus City Attorney's Office announced last September it would not pursue charges because of, quote, conflicting and inconsistent information. Zeke's father also yesterday tweeted a snippet of the story from the Star-Telegram and wrote from his account, quote, my son's legal team is ready to fight. Let's deal. You know, you will know the setup and the plot. So that's clearly the side of this they are taking. Zeke Elliott's side is taking the side that he feels he was set up for this by this woman, and this is the basis of his appeal. Remember that his appeal will basically go back directly to Roger Goodell or to someone of Goodell's choosing. So it is a very tough road for Zeke Elliott to try to have his suspension reduced.
Well, I think it's going to be, and again, as we look at this, there are basically three different ways you see this. You say, okay, the league, it doesn't care what the law says. They do their own investigation. What they did, this investigation definitely took a long time. there's the side that people say, listen, if the law isn't pressing charges, then the league shouldn't have any authority to do anything. There are people that believe that, and that's not how it works. And the league had the right to put this into play as whether collectively bargain or a private entity. And then there's well, in this case, as Zeke Elliott says, I didn't do anything. We've heard Jerry Jones sit there and say, I've read everything, I've looked into everything. And to Jerry Jones, he said there were no signs to me of any kind of domestic violence. So now there's that side of it in the appeal. Well, I guess what I would say to that is this investigation took a long time. I got to imagine everything they're going to show Roger Goodell and who's ever listening to this appeal, the investigation they've already looked at. They've already seen. Now, I don't know that for a fact, but I know they got a lot of information. If you read the pages and pages of the information and evidence that they had, it was a lot. So unless Zeke's group is going to present something that the league hasn't seen in their investigation, I think he's in for a tough road. There are those that thought if he goes in there and is contrite and said, I made a mistake and, I didn't do what you all think I did, but I still have done enough things to make a mistake and just kind of fall on the sword a little bit, maybe the games would go down. And I'm sure there are those that say, why should he do that if he didn't feel he did anything wrong at all? In the domestic violence case, I'm not talking about the other things of which he's done. But he's taking the side of fighting and saying, I didn't do this. So where I think that's going to be difficult for him is there new evidence out there? Because if there's not, then the league is just going to say, hey, dude, we saw all this already. All the four people on the committee looked at this. They put this into their equation already, and we came back with this. You're just giving us the same information from your side of it. And if that, in fact, is the case, if in fact what he and his group are going to present to the league has already seen, again, I have to hold off in case there is something they haven't seen, but if it's something they've already seen, I don't think he has any chance of getting those games reduced.
Heath Evans, who was a fine player for a long time
yes.
and a very respected voice
yes.
amongst National Football League players and within National Football League circles, was a guest last night on the Freddie and Fitz program here on ESPN Radio. He had some very, very strong opinions on the Zeke Elliott situation, and you'll hear them right out of the gate. This was Heath Evans last night.
The boy needs to learn his lesson because he's acting like a boy. He needs to be a grown man. His talent is grown man-like. His character is little boy-like, and he's got to fix it. So, heck, Jerry Jones' daughter is the head of the domestic abuse policy holders within the NFL. So why they're even allowing the kid to appeal it is beyond me.
There's Heath Evans with some pretty strong words.
Yeah, I mean, there is the thought of, I believe they're letting him appeal. You heard Jerry Jones. Jerry Jones, why would Jerry – is he going to come out publicly? You can back your guy. But Jerry Jones basically pointed a finger at Congress like Rafi Palmeiro, didn't he? He said, I've read the report. I saw no signs of domestic violence. So it wasn't just like we support, Zeke Elliott through these times and we'll be behind him. He's a Dallas Cowboy. It was, I saw nothing in that report that has to do with domestic violence. So they are.
Well, I don't understand. Did he not see the same things that were the letter that Roger Goodell sent to Zeke? That's the part that doesn't make any sense.
I would agree with you, but yet he still said that. So, and you even heard Jason Witten talking about, and some of the other Cowboys, but Witten certainly is a guy that's walking into the Hall of Fame, a well-respected player who's been around and seen a lot of young players and old players, quite honestly, talking about backing their teammate and even bringing up the fact that he wasn't charged, but also, making sure he put in there that there's no excuse for ever putting your hands on a woman, and covering, because there is that side of it. It's just a lot of it who you believe. Do you believe something happened there? And if something happened there, I think there are those that say, hey, listen, if something happened, take your 6 games, and learn from it. And the domestic violence is the biggest portion of this because we've seen the other things he's done as well. He's not maturing, and everybody matures differently. he's still doing some dumb kid things, right? Again, I'm separating the domestic violence from this. The speeding and the things in the bars and such. That's just stuff you just need to grow up out of. As I said, you can be in professional sports, but it doesn't make you a professional. And he's not the first or the last young player or even player that's been in a league for a while that's not going to do things that are dumb, and you just hope they learn from them and become a better person from them. But I'm with you. This one seems interesting. There was a long investigation, came out with damning evidence according to the league. You have the owner just absolutely doing a 180 and completely disagreeing, said he's read stuff and he didn't see anything in here, and Zeke and them are going to go for a fight. So you wonder where this is going to go if, in fact, what is it, after the appeal, it's 10 days and then there'll be a ruling after the appeal is heard. So it's all going to come down while preseason is going on. If he doesn't win the appeal, what happens then?
Let me play you one more Heath Evans, and then we'll move on to other business here. Again, we'll wait and see what the outcome of this is. But and Schefter will be in here in just a few minutes, so he can give us any of the latest information on it. But here's just a little more. This is, again Heath Evans last night on Freddie and Fitz.
There's too many little kids that are already watching Zeke and thinking, well, if I'm super talented, I can get away. If I'm super talented, I can act like I'm better than everybody else. And that's the worst thing for the NFL Shield.
Yeah, listen, I get what he's saying, but this has happened. This isn't starting and stopping with Zeke Elliott. It's just kind of another a high. But at this point he's getting punished. So I think that's if in fact he did what the evidence to the league said he did, then he is getting punished for it, because that is one of the things we do worry about, is what message is being sent down to the lower level. And we've seen athlete after athlete get preferential treatment. That's something that is not going to change. Better or worse, however you want to look at it, that's not going to change. Hey everyone, Mike Golick here. Support for the Mike and Mike podcast comes from our friends at Rocket Mortgage by Quicken Loans. Chances are you're confident when it comes to your work, your hobbies, your life. Rocket Mortgage gives you that same level of confidence when it comes to buying a home or refinancing your existing home loan. Rocket Mortgage is simple, allowing you to fully understand all the details and be confident you're getting the right mortgage for you. To get started, go to rocketmortgage.com/Mikes. Equal housing lender, licensed in all 50 states, NMLS, consumeraccess.org number 3030.
Back to school time already? It sure is. Sport Clips Haircuts wants you to leap to the head of the class with our giveaway of back-to-school gear plus a year of free haircuts. Visit Sport Clips for the right cut and ask for the MVP experience. Then we'll take care of the rest. After all, winning hair isn't everything. It's the only thing. Review the rules and enter to win at sportclips.com/back-to-school. Sport Clips. It's good to be a guy. No purchase necessary. Ends August 25th, 2017. Must be 18 or older. Subject to official rules at sportclips.com. Void where prohibited.
All right, we are Mike and Mike, and it is a delight as we are in the midst of hour number 12 of ESPN's Fantasy Football Marathon presented by DraftKings to bring in our two friends who are here for the duration of all of this. Adam Schefter is to my left and Matthew Berry is to my right. Good morning, boys.
Good morning.
Good morning. How are we feeling?
I'm glad you said it was hour 12 because I literally had no idea what hour we were in. Feeling good, though. Feeling good.
I think the biggest difference, Schefty, would you say that from last year, you found the shower late?
Yeah.
This time around, you found it. You knew where it was, so you could get it.
I told Matthew I'm reserving the shower time from 6 to 6:20, and I jumped in there.
And this is the kind of teammate I am. I just, I'm going to pat myself on the back here for a second. I said, Shefty, I will go after you. I could have. I had a window there where I could have jumped in the shower before him, but I said, you know what, Adam?
He allowed me to divergenize the shower.
By all means.
Here.
That's good.
By all means.
Good team play by
That's
you.
what I thought.
Really
I thought
nice.
so.
Yeah.
I'm not going to lie to you. I would rather go 28 hours without showering than jump right into the shower after either of the two of you.
I agree. After this hit with you guys, Adam and I are doing a social hit, and then there's been an hour between when Adam's done with a shower and.
How about a nice bath? How about a nice, lovely? I'll draw you a lovely.
They don't have
bath.
it here. There's not enough room in DC too.
Yeah, that's true.
So,
all right, let's get down to business here because we got football stuff to get into, and we got fantasy football stuff obviously to get into with the number one fantasy app, over 13 million players last year, the ESPN Fantasy Football app, and I know there'll be even more than that this year, so I got a whole sheet of questions set aside for Barry here. But Shefty, let's start with you quickly on Zeke Elliott because that's where Mike and I opened the show. He will all expectations are he'll officially appeal his suspension today. Just give us a sense of the timetable of how soon we should expect there to be some total resolution to that situation.
I think we get a hearing about 2 weeks from today. I think we get a decision probably by early September. And I think then they have to make a decision about whether they want to appeal that or take it to court or seek some sort of action against the decision that the commissioner in his office levy. Now, again, I don't know that any of that will happen. We got an idea yesterday. You saw an article in the Fort Worth Star-Telegram, Zeke Elliott's father retweeting and taking out some of the excerpts. You see that clearly they're going to attack the facts in this case, the NFL's findings, which they don't agree with, which I don't believe is going to do them any good. They may be right, but it doesn't matter because the league made the decision on the suspension,
based on all
and the league
things,
is going to make the decision on the appeal based on the evidence the league feels it saw. Now, again, the league does what it wants to do. But in this particular case, it controls the case.
Is there any way we think, because I agree with you, if there's no new evidence brought by Zeke's team, then the NFL is going to say, we saw all that. That went into our equation.
That's right. They're not going to bring any new evidence.
So that's the thing. You don't think there's going to be anything new?
No, I don't think so. Listen, if there was something new and they had over a year to present it, don't you think they would have presented it at that point?
I agree, but I'm just wondering.
No, I think they're going to attack the facts, and they're going to say, look, this woman openly said in front of witnesses that she wanted to ruin his career. Okay, they knew that.
Right. Yeah.
And they still ruled 6 games.
So there's that situation, and then to transition it to fantasy football seems ridiculous, but
welcome to the world I live in. That's the unfortunate thing is you sit here and you have to sit here and talk about the fantasy value.
People are going to be worrying about their teams and what do you do, and so what do you do in a situation like this?
I still believe that even if he misses 6 games, and remember the Cowboys have a bye in there, so Ezekiel Elliott will not play until Week 8 if the suspension is upheld and everything happens like that. I still believe he is worth a late 2nd round, early 3rd round pick. Remember last year, Le'Veon Bell missed 4 games, 3rd best running back in fantasy. Melvin Gordon missed 3 games, was the 7th best running back in fantasy. Because in a 10-team league, which is the ESPN Standard League, there's enough depth that you can sort of mix and match, filling it in, and then you would have your, in theory, number 1 running back and Ezekiel Elliott for the stretch run and the playoffs, which would be pretty tough to beat. If I drafted Ezekiel Elliott, I would reach for Darren McFadden, who I think will still be very successful. It's an extremely good offensive line in Dallas. They will continue to run the ball. McFadden had a great year 2 years ago before they drafted Ezekiel Elliott. So honestly, you just put an extra emphasis on running back there.
In a 10 or 10-12 league, in a 10 or 10-team league, you can do that. 10 or 12-team league, you could do.
Yeah.
In a 14 or 16-team league, I don't think you could do that. Like we play in a 16-team War Room league. You take Ezekiel Elliott in the 2nd, 3rd round, I think your team is buried. Because you got a guy taking up a roster spot, and by the time it rolls around to you for your 3rd or 4th pick,
a lot gone.
And generally speaking, these drafts are not even generally. In every case, these drafts are going to take place before a total resolution to this case is concerned. So everyone really wants to hear more than anything.
A lot of drafts will take place the Tuesday and Wednesday before the season opens.
Well, you just gave
Thursday.
me early September. The season opens September 7th, right?
Correct.
I think there's drafts going on all month. The 2 weekends before the season open are the 2 most popular, but there are drafts going on right now. There are drafts that are already happening, and there are drafts that are happening during this marathon, actually. I mean, so you're seeing this. I think one concern, and Adam, you and I talked about this earlier in the marathon, is could you see a scenario in which Ezekiel Elliott
gets to stay.
Gets to stay for a little bit. But anyway, so it's the appeal process is going on. And then in week 8, so he's playing from week 1 on. And then in week 8, all of a sudden, the suspension is upheld. And now he's going to miss the final 6 games of the regular season.
Now, again,
like that.
You'd have to go to a legal expert. From everything I understand, no, that's not going to be the case. So,
but how about a very powerful owner who just went into the Hall of Fame, goes in with him or somehow exerts whatever influence he can, and the thing gets knocked down 6 games to 4 games? To me, that does not seem like an inconceivable possibility in his appeal.
It's possible.
And how does that change? Again, I echo Mike's point that to be considering the fantasy value of a player in a case as significant as this does feel wrong.
Sensitive.
And yet it is the conversation that we are having. And thus, if it were to be a 4-game suspension rather than a 6-game suspension, how much does that change the paradigm?
I think it is significant. Again, Le'Veon Bell missed 4 games, and Ezekiel Elliott is right there with Le'Veon Bell in terms of in terms of talent and opportunity in fantasy football. And he was a top 4 fantasy running back last year. So yes, I think that would. If Ezekiel Elliott were only going to miss 4 games, I don't think I would move him. I think I would have him as a top 5 player overall.
This is hour 12 of the Fantasy Football Marathon presented by DraftKings. Schefter and Matt Berry are here. Matt's got his own fantasy football show this season, which we'll get details of coming up as we continue. But since we're on Zeke Elliott, let's run through running backs really quickly. Right at the top, people are choosing between Le'Veon Bell and David Johnson. And if they're smart and they have the first pick, they will take.
I don't think you can go wrong with either guy. I'm moving David Johnson ahead of Le'Veon Bell. Just the holdout continuing makes me nervous. Anytime a running back, even as talented as one as Le'Veon Bell, makes me nervous about potential injury, and he is somebody that has struggled with that in the past. Again, at this level, you have to nitpick. They're both amazing players. They're both going to be huge. I don't think you can mess that pick up, but David Johnson...
But he missed 3 games last year, and you had no problem taking him early
Le'Veon Bell?
Yeah.
I mean, and it paid out, by the way. It paid
David
off.
Johnson going number 1 in our draft here that Bobby Flay took and paid off for him as well.
Absolutely. Again, they're both amazing guys, and I think there's some touchdown regression coming for David Johnson, but still, it just makes me nervous about him missing time because I'm worried about injury. With Le'Veon Bell last year, you knew after 3 games he was coming back.
So let's mix in the football news here. The thought of Le'Veon Bell, I think we all believe he's going to come back when he is going to come back.
From the moment he didn't get that deal done, I said he would be back in mid to late August. It is now August 15th.
I agree. Right around third preseason game
I would say right about next week.
Yeah.
The story will come up. Le'Veon Bell is reporting to Steelers camp.
I completely agree with you. How about Aaron Donald? I know not many people are taking the Ram defense to worry about that, but from a football side of it, what's with Aaron Donald?
I'm glad you asked that.
Thank you.
Because, again, this is just reading between the lines and me adding up 1 and 1. And we talked on this show about Odell Beckham Jr., and Khalil Mack is in a similar situation, and Aaron Donald. You're talking about the elite players in the game, the young players, who are scheduled to make this year in the vicinity of $2 million, $2.5 million, $3 million, when the guaranteed money that they're going to make on their contracts at some point in time. Aaron Donald, when he gets a new deal, is going to make $60, $65, $70 million in guaranteed money.
Right.
Why would Aaron Donald go in right now to go play for $1.8, $2 million? Why would he do that, ever? Now, the Rams made what I understand to be a very strong offer right before camp. But I don't think they're going to budge as long as he's out of camp. And he's out of camp, and they're not going to budge. So we got a standoff and a standstill, or whatever you want to call it, that I think threatens to go on for a while here. We may not see Aaron Donald.
And this is different
for a while.
This is different than the franchise, right? I mean,
this is different. He is under contract.
Everybody understands.
So he's facing a $40,000 a day fine by not being
But
there.
also, he can get a big deal where Le'Veon Bell, no matter what, is only playing on 1 year and $12.1 million. Nothing to do about that. But Aaron Donald
Le'Veon Bell has not signed his franchise tender,
right.
So he's not subject to any
all.
fines. He's not under contract. There's nothing that they can do. Aaron Donald is under contract. And it may be a while before we see him again.
All right, we will have these guys. We'll see them again, and it won't be that long. We'll have Schefter in the next hour. We'll have Matt Berry, who, again, has his own fantasy show coming to you soon.
Home isn't just a place. It's a feeling. Whether you're at home, your business, or online, ADT helps keep you safe. With security systems, home automation, alarms, and surveillance. So you can feel at home wherever you are. Go to ADT.com to get that feeling. ADT. Home. Safe home.
So glad you're with us here as we continue with hour 12 of the Fantasy Football Marathon, and lots of fantasy football information and conversation for you all morning long. And, of course, we are doing our regular show here, Mike and Mike, mixed in amongst all the fantasy talk as well. And I wanted to bring up something you just had with Schefter, where Schefter brought up Aaron Donald. You brought it up correctly. Yeah. So we know that someone like Le'Veon Bell, who has been offered the franchise tender and will eventually sign it and come in and play for it, is not in camp right now, and I'm just putting myself in his position. He's thinking, I'm not increasing my lot no matter what I do, so why not just rest through these dog days of training camp, and I'll go in there when I need to go in there. It's not costing me any money. A guy like Aaron Donald, who is under contract, but is looking at $70 million guaranteed dollars whenever he gets a new deal, is getting fined $40,000 a day for every day of camp that he's missing. I would ask you this question. He's not in there with his teammates for financial reasons because it's a business, right? So I don't hear people who have much of a problem with that. And yet I hear a lot of people who had a problem with college kids missing their last games or whatever the case may be for financial reasons. And to me, the motivation and the concept seem to be almost exactly the same.
I agree with you. You know why? Because it was the first time. That's why. Someone broke through the glass ceiling there and decided to actually say it. You know, I'm sure it's been done in the past with I've got a bad ankle, I've got a bad shoulder, I can't play anyway. But this was specifically done, really, in my recollection, you correct me if I'm wrong, for the first time by known All-Americans who were saying, I am not risking it. I'm not risking it to get ready. So I think that caught some people off guard. It caught me off guard, and my thought is still, I don't think I could. I'm not a pro yet. I'm still playing in college. I know I'm working for the pros, and there was a process for it. They broke out of the process a little bit. I think it will become, I don't think a norm for everybody because it's not for everybody. There are those that even need that last game on tape, that last bowl game on tape, and there are those that don't. So I think because it was the first time, Greeny, I think that's one of the big reasons that you saw a lot of kind of uproar about it. But as you stop and think about it, outside of I'm physically leaving my team. That's another difference. The season hasn't started. Aaron Donald has proven himself. He's been on that team. He's part of that team. These guys are leaving their team before that last game. So I really think it raised a few eyebrows and took some people by surprise for that. But I think that's the main reason, because it was the first time.
The first time I remember the conversation really taking place involved Jadeveon Clowney.
Right.
When everyone knew going into his final year in college that he was going to be the number one pick in the draft so long as he was still standing when the season ended. And there was all this talk about, well, why would he play the season? And that was really where that conversation began.
Right.
Prior to that, it had all gone the other way. I remember Andrew Luck coming back and playing a season he didn't have to. Matt Leinart coming back and playing a college season he didn't have to. Peyton Manning coming back and playing a college season he didn't have to. And look, God bless them if that's what they decide they want to do, but it should work in the reverse as well. Mike and Straight Talk Wireless, nationwide coverage on America's largest and most dependable 4G LTE networks. Roger Goodell says he would like to see the preseason shortened. He's been saying that for years. He said that on our show. It's got to be 5 years ago now that he recognizes that the product that is being placed on the field for these preseason games and that is being charged full prices for the fans, that I believe in every case, certainly in the majority of cases, season ticket holders are required to purchase, is not an NFL caliber product. And a solution to that may be coming up, and the person who may have discovered is Bill Belichick. Did you see Belichick sat 40 players not to play in their preseason game? And the reason is because they had – go ahead.
Because of the teams they're practicing with.
Exactly.
I mean, that's camp now. Camp isn't about two practices in full pads anymore where you can get a lot of work done amongst yourselves. That was the CBA. The players wanted this. The players wanted a later start date in April, and they didn't want the 2-a-days anymore. So you got one practice in pads. The other, they're wearing ball caps out. I mean, they're basically barely moving. So you get less there. These are better in I guess I shouldn't say completely better, but coaches are using them better as preseason games is practice with another team. Have them in, not just one, have them in for a couple of days. Again, because you can only have one practice with them. So have them in there for a couple of days, because what happens in a preseason game? You get 3 plays and you punt, 3 plays and you punt. That doesn't happen here. Here you're going team period. You're going 20 plays. It may be, if you don't get a first down, okay, you start the series over again, but you keep the ball. So you're going 20 straight plays of series, and that's the work you want over and over and over again. You can roll in a lot of guys, and a lot of reps can be had. That's the way a lot of teams are doing things.
And
now.
As a consequence, and Belichick basically said it, I hate to use that word, but my regular players are getting all their work in that.
Not putting them in
these
there.
Preseason games, I'll see all these guys trying to make the end of the roster, which I know you want to protect, and we were afraid that those guys would lose opportunities if you cut down on the preseason. But now, maybe not. So maybe you can get it. Look, there was a time when there were 6 preseason games, and they cut it to 4, and everything seemed to be okay. Mm-hmm. They could do it this way, and they will cut it down. Now, then the flip side of that, the owners are going to say, we want more regular season
2 more games. That's exactly
to make up that revenue, and that, of course, flies directly in the face of the notion of player safety, but I wouldn't put it past them to do it anyway. All right, we will continue with our fantasy football marathon presented by DraftKings in just a moment. We're Mike and Mike. Stay right there.
Sports fans anywhere can earn a nationally recognized degree from Penn State online. Whether you're starting or finishing your degree, study where and when it's convenient for you. Choose from more than 125 programs to become a top prospect in your field and advance your career. Learn more at worldcampusinfo.com. Penn State World Campus, a world of possibilities. Online. Visit worldcampusinfo.com today. That's worldcampusinfo.com.
Here we are. We're back in better than ever. Mike and Mike, presented by Progressive Insurance. Guests on the Shell Pennzoil Performance Line. And we welcome you to hour 13 of the Fantasy Football Marathon. And another reminder, sign up and play fantasy football on ESPN.com or in the ESPN Fantasy Football app. And it does occur to me, we were just watching on, for those of you with us on television this morning, a nice little animation that Barry and Schefter put together. And in it, Schefter is giving you the scoop on a running back who's out for the season. And it occurs to me, if you have insider information when it comes to stock trading, that's illegal. It's against the law. Is Schefter considered that? If you're tight with Schefter, are you allowed to get information from him on injuries and things like that before the other people in your league know, or could that be considered insider trading?
I don't know. I don't know.
I mean, it really actually does. Schefter makes fantasy moves before the world knows about it.
I have no
idea.
The only thing
Schefter does before he tweets the information and breaks the story to the world is he adjusts his fantasy roster accordingly.
Yeah,
that's basically what he does.
Listen, I'm in tight with Schefter, so I'm not saying a word.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Right, we had the baseball performance of the year. The baseball performance of the year came last night, and we'll get details on that in just a moment. But first, we're going to give you an update every single day on Chris Golick's walk. She tweets at ND Mom. She is Mike Golick's wife. And she is walking for a good cause, walking 320 miles.
317 miles. It's a Notre Dame trail. Again, 175-year anniversary, 75th year of Notre Dame. Father Soren walked from Vincennes, Indiana to South Bend, and that's where he settled on Notre Dame, where Notre Dame is and has been in South Bend. And as part of that, there's 32 people that are walking and biking the entire distance. And Chris has tried to turn this into to help out the Center for the Homeless in South Bend. She has a GoFundMe page at ND Mom, so she's raising money for that. But this is a Notre Dame thing. It's a very, very cool thing. But man, there's people wonder why I'm not doing this with her, because it's too hard.
No one who knows you is wondering that.
There's no chance. The first day when they got there, they messed around and walked 2 miles just to kind of get things off. Yesterday was the first big day. They walked 19.2 miles. 19.2 miles. Today, she's already up and on the road. They're walking 18.2 miles. Then they're having lunch and then biking 21 miles.
My goodness.
Yeah, so doing just under 40 miles
walking
today.
18 miles before lunch.
Yeah, before lunch.
Well, we got a lot of different music for her to keep her going because we know she's listening on the app. So everybody is excited for Chris walking it out from Vincennes, Indiana, all the way to South Bend, and we're excited to hear that. So we'll keep updating you on that regularly. And again, if you want to chip in a few bucks as well for her, she's raising money for a good cause. Meanwhile, we've got Nerd Notes.
Nerd alert! Nerd! News you didn't even know you needed, or even want.
Well, if I was you, I'd do something about it.
These are Mike and Mike's Nerd Notes.
Oh, we got fantasy football Nerd Notes, courtesy of Hembo.
Wow.
They're brought to you by Dell. Get instant gold status at Shell. Join the Fuel Rewards program now at fuelrewards.com/gold. Here we go.
Nerd alert!
Number one, as a whole, the fantasy sports industry is worth $7.2 billion.
Billion.
And has nearly 60 million users in North America, 66% of whom play fantasy football. 84% of players participate in both seasonal and daily leagues. That's a ridiculous number.
It's crazy.
And just think about the popularity of football. So the whole industry is $7.2 billion. Basically, 2/3 of them are playing football.
Right.
And there are a lot of other places, a lot of other sports that work out nicely with it, but it's overwhelmingly a football concept. Onto the field, after wide receivers took over the top 2 average draft position spots last year, it is the runners who are taking over now. Le'Veon Bell and David Johnson have taken that mantle for this season. They finished first and second in PPR points per game last season.
Well, they're going to get the most touches. Again, the running back of today, the guy that not just runs the ball, but catches the ball out of the backfield, they're getting more touches than the running back, than the wide receivers are. So they're going to score you more points. And these guys, Le'Veon Bell, David Johnson, Zeke Elliott when he's back, these type of running backs, these are the guys that are going to get you the big points.
Meanwhile, and for the 3rd consecutive season, Antonio Brown has the highest average draft position of any wide receiver. Going back to 2014, he scored 1,082 PPR points. That's 47 more than any other player, 150 more than any other receiver. Just off the top of your head right now, if you had the first pick amongst the receivers, would he be your first?
Either he or Odell. There's something about maybe thinking about Odell Beckham Jr.
How about Julio Jones?
It's Antonio, it's Odell, it's Julio, A.J. Green. Those are like my top guys there. I don't think you can go wrong anywhere, but you'd like to pick that guy who gets the most, and it's tough to go wrong with
like
Antonio.
A.J. Green and Julio Jones are guys who, particularly in the case of AJ, you have injury concerns. With a pick like this, you can't afford to miss a week or two. Julio is a guy who every now and again will have a week where he doesn't do that much. They spread the ball around a lot in that offense. They just gave Devonta Freeman a whole bunch of money. With the Giants, Odell is getting the ball.
He is getting the ball.
I
know they got Brandon Marshall in there, but Odell is still the man, no doubt about it.
Aaron Rodgers is expected to be the first quarterback off draft boards in the 8 seasons in which he has started at least 15 games. He has been 1 or 2 in quarterback fantasy 7 of those 8 seasons.
But I will say the quarterback position could be the deepest it has been in a long, long time. In some of these drafts, again, me and Mike did one in Minnesota. I think the first quarterback wasn't taken until the 3rd or 4th round. It all depends. Some like to take them the higher, depending on how many people are drafting, so you don't lose out on one and all that kind of deal. But it is a deep position, and Aaron Rodgers is tough to bet against, no doubt about it. It'll be interesting, though, with Tom Brady and with Brandon Cooks being in New England now. Cooks had Drew Brees throwing to him. Think about him. He had Drew Brees throwing to him. Now he's got Tom Brady throwing to him. So Cooks from a player position as a wide receiver, and then certainly what Brady can do as well.
And finally, Leonard Fournette and Christian McCaffrey are the only rookies with an average draft position inside the top 50. It'll be tough for either of them to top what Zeke Elliott did last year when his 325 points were the most by a rookie flex player since Edgerrin James in 1999.
If I'm choosing between the two, I'm taking McCaffrey for him catching the ball out of the backfield. Fournette will run the ball more. I have more questions about that offensive line. They'll try and put him more in the passing game. That's what needs to happen. But McCaffrey will be more in the passing game, so I think he'll have more potential.
And I would go the other way. I would go Fournette, who I think they are going to run into the ground this year in Jacksonville. And the guy that, again, gets left out in this conversation is Dalvin Cook, who is going to have a very, very productive year in Minnesota and is, in fact, my pick for Rookie of the Year. And those are Nerd Notes, brought to you by Dell. Need help finding the right Dell PCs with Intel Core processors for your business? Call 877-BUY-DELL. You can talk to a Dell Small Business Tech Advisor. All right, we are Mike and Mike, and we will have plenty, as I mentioned, of fantasy football and regular football and all sorts of other conversation for you today. But there is a story this morning that certainly needs to be a big part of the conversation. It was the baseball performance of the year last night, and it almost doesn't matter what else happens. This is likely going to wind up being the baseball performance of the season. It belonged to Chad Bettis yesterday, who got a standing ovation merely by walking to the mound. And he said he was taking deep breaths and trying to maintain his poise in so doing. The reason is this was the first time Chad Bettis had returned to the mound after undergoing cancer treatments. He was diagnosed with testicular cancer. They performed surgery. They discovered that it had spread. He had to go through chemotherapy treatments, all the while, I suppose, wondering whether this day would ever come back. And here was this day as he walked to the mound last night and threw 7 scoreless innings in his return from a cancer treatment, receiving the most well-deserved standing ovation you will see in baseball this year.
He was diagnosed in November. Surgery, 9 weeks of chemo, and 9 months between being diagnosed and now on the field. I mean, just an incredible story. That's no matter what happens. In fact, again, 6 hits, struck out 2, no decision, whatever. Doesn't matter. Just him being out there and throwing is such a great story. I told earlier one on the football side of David Quisenberry, the offensive tackle for the Houston Texans, was drafted by them in 2013 in the 6th round, but had a foot injury, missed that year, and missed the next 3 years because he was dealing with cancer and chemo, never stepped on the field until the first preseason game. So those are the stories, the battles coming back and what they're fighting through and what they and their families and the support groups are going through, and then getting back to what they love is almost the secondary to be on the field for it. That's got to be the actual, hit the goal for them. But the work and drive it took for them to get to that point is just incredible.
Absolutely. He allowed 6 hits, struck out 2. And the record books, it'll say he got a no decision. Right. But there will not be a pitcher with a bigger win this season than Chad Bettis last night. We're Mike and Mike, presented by Progressive Insurance. Our guests on the Shell Pennzoil Performance Line. We got a lot of Twitter reaction I want to get to. But first off, Golic has a beef with the Chicago Bears.
I have a beef with beefing, and not just the Chicago Bears, the New England Patriots as well. I just, there's some of old school in me that I'm proud will not leave. I know I get mocked, at times, and I want to be progressive as well. Especially with young kids in sports, playing sports, and now Mike working here as well. It's not like I just want to stick to the old man on the porch thing, and I feel I've become progressive in some things. But there's also some things. I know camp has changed. I know now there's just the 1 practice, not the 2. But, I'm tired of coaches throwing players out of practice for getting in a fight. I really am. And I know from the coaches' side, listen, my last year in Miami, when I jumped into a fight, I didn't have my uniform on. I was injured, and I jumped into a fight, and Don Shula talked about fining me. We didn't throw anybody out of practice. I know in New England there was a fight between, it was a receiver and a DB, was it not? And Bill Belichick threw him out of practice. That's his rule. And that's fine if it's your rule.
It was Stephon Gilmore and Julian Edelman.
Yeah, threw him out of practice. Kyle Long got thrown out of Chicago Bears practice. Probably a little frustration for him with the injury. He had the ankle. He's limited reps. They're putting him over at left guard now. He chose not to get surgery on his shoulder. So I think he's frustrated as well. That he wants to be farther along as he's learning his 3rd position now. Came in as right guard, then right tackle, and now left guard. And, by the way, been a Pro Bowler all the time as well. But either way, I mean, camp is camp, man. And I know while it's not as physically grueling because you're not doing 2 practices a day, sometimes you blow off a little steam. I don't mind a skirmish every now and then. I'm not saying like when we were in Philly where we fought almost every play is the right way. I get it. But, a couple here and there, and then you can certainly say that's it, whatever, how you want to deal with it. But, a fight and you get tossed, I just don't buy that. I don't like it. And I know coaches, you don't want anybody, and I'm sure there'll be people right away. That's all you need is someone swinging, hitting somebody with a helmet on, breaking a hand, and then you lose them. I get all that. But there have been skirmishes forever in practice, dust-ups. They don't last long when they happen. I don't mind a couple of those, and then you get back to what you're doing. And then you move on. But leave the practice field, I don't like that.
There's so many reasons why you're wrong. One of them is you don't want players. See, here's why Bill Belichick doesn't want it. Because everyone out there is tough. Sometimes I feel like guys want to fight because they want to prove how tough they are. Bottom line of it is everybody out there is tough. Mm-hmm. The teams that win are the teams that are smart, the teams that are smarter than the other. Bill Belichick's teams have won without players who are going to the Hall of Fame largely right. because they're smart. And the smart way to handle something on the field is not to get a 15-yard penalty at a bad time. So when you get really mad about something and you react instinctively in a game in a way that gets your team a 15-yard penalty, you're hurting your team. Bill Belichick is setting the tone, sending the message, and sort of defying that muscle memory now to not do something stupid, to not react in a way that might actually wind up hurting your team. He's saying, let's be smarter than that. And if he drills home that message in the heat of August, then it will be remembered in the cold of December, and there'll be one 15-yard flag this season that his team won't get that might actually change the outcome of a game because he sent a guy off the field yesterday.
Whatever.
And yet it makes sense.
Did you see? It does, huh? Did you see the 30 for 30 on the Bears, 85 Bears?
The 85 Bears are an outlier.
No.
Once in a lifetime team.
Did you see it?
Yes,
or
I
not?
saw it. I saw it.
Do you know the amount of fights they had? I'm not saying you fight all the time, but they seem to be able to work through it just fine.
And that stuff, and I remember stuff like that happening with Red Grange, too. We're not talking about 1985 anymore.
Players
We're
are
talking
players,
about
man.
2017.
Players are players. Some things don't change just over the span of time. They don't. You get frustrated in camp. Sometimes you throw a couple of punches. To boot a guy from practice, sorry. I don't like it. I don't know what to tell you.
Okay. We are Mike and Mike. Let me give you some Twitter reaction through what.
If I were to punch you right now, you think they'd send me home?
Yes, I do. Well, look, we've been waiting 17 and a half years. You got a few more weeks. Hang on. I mean, let's see if you're going to get out of this thing with everything intact. So Golick has his beef with the Bears.
But I get what you're saying. I understand.
It's a dumb thing to do.
It's not a dumb thing.
It is a dumb thing to do.
Well, listen, I disagree with that.
If you get aggravated, the dumb
just
thing
because
to
you
do
do
is
it in the practice doesn't mean it happens in the game all the time.
Then why are you practicing? Because you were trying to build stuff into people to do them naturally. Well, then what else are you doing? What is the purpose of this?
Coaches are doing it because they don't want time wasted with fights. They don't want somebody getting hurt by punching someone in the helmet. I don't think that the main thought process is if I stop the fight now, I won't get that 15-yarder in November. To coaches, it's a waste of time. It's a waste of their time, and they don't want their time wasted.
It's not that much time. It's just a little bit.
It isn't, but I'm not a coach.
I am not.
No, you ask a coach. You ask Bill Belichick why he kicks a guy out for fighting. I guarantee he's not going to say so in December he doesn't get a 15-yarder. I'm telling you, he's not going to say that.
You're wrong. And I would add to that he also would say, because this is my rule. My rule is that we don't fight.
No.
And if you violate a rule, I'm going to send you off the field.
As I said, I completely understand that. He made it a rule, and he booted him off the field. I'm just saying I'm not a particular fan of
this. Is the same coach who will stop a player walking down the hallway minding his own business and say, who is the third guy to the left on kickoff return on the team we're playing this weekend, and what is his tendency? And if you can't answer that question, you got a real problem. So he's playing a cerebral game that most of the rest of the league is not, which is why Belichick has been playing chess and everyone else has been playing checkers for 20 years, and why he's won 5 championships and was basically 2 plays away from 7.
Very successful,
and is the greatest coach of all time.
Doesn't mean I have to agree with everything that goes on.
All right, but the point is he's sending players off the field, and he's got 5 championships.
No, I know.
And Buddy Ryan, God bless him, and I loved him, and he was. But Buddy Ryan was more entertaining every day than Bill Belichick has been his entire career put together. And yet Bill Belichick has got a whole lot of jewelry to show for what he's done. Okay, Mike and Mike, let me go through a couple of tweets here. Mike Dion, this is from the 1-800-Flowers.com Twitter feed. And again, we're on ESPN today, so some of you may not be familiar with the show. You tweet at us at Mike and Mike, and we read them throughout the program. Mike Dion tweets, why is it okay for NFL to charge full price for preseason game with stars sitting, but not okay for NBA players to sit? Mike, let me make it clear. Nothing about it is okay. The NFL preseason and the fact that those get attached to your regular season tickets, it's a horrendous. It's a joke. They can do whatever they want to do. That's the point. And you have no choice but to buy them. If you want to buy, I don't know that this is true for all 32 teams, but I know that it is true for most of them, if not all, that if you want to buy season tickets, if you want those 8 tickets, you have to buy these other 2, which you can't give away. When I was a season ticket holder, I've given up my tickets, but when I was a season ticket holder, you can't give those tickets away. And to his credit, Roger Goodell has acknowledged that for years. He said that on our show 5 years ago.
Listen, I agree. I've never had season tickets to a pro team. I had season tickets to Notre Dame, but they don't have preseason games, so it doesn't matter. So I don't go through this, but I completely understand why people would have a problem with it, and Roger Goodell has a problem with it. But, everybody can have a problem with it in the league, but let's make it change. And will it change? I have no idea. What you may see is less preseason games that you get charged for when they go down to 2 preseason games, and you may get another home game. If they go to 2 more regular season games, you get 1 more home game. So we'll see if that evens it out a little bit.
There's a lot of reaction to our conversation about Zeke Elliott. Again, the Cowboys and Zeke will, from everything we can tell, vigorously fight and appeal his 6-game suspension. They will file that appeal officially today. And if you were not with us in our previous hour, Adam Schefter, who will rejoin us in just a few minutes, told us that he expects that the outcome of that, the decision from the appeal, should come in early September. We'll start doing some math there. September 7th is when the season begins. That's a Thursday. The Cowboys play what now can only be described as the traditional opener against the Giants on that Sunday on the 10th. So will they have the result by then, the decision by then? We would assume they will.
Yes, I would think so.
Is it possible that suspension gets knocked down from 6 games to 4 games with a very powerful owner in Jerry Jones vigorously defending him? Look, I would have thought that with Brady. I would have thought that with Brady and Kraft, and it didn't happen. So I'm going to say no. I'm going to say he's going to be suspended 6 games.
I don't think it's going to happen either. And if he's suspended, if the suspension stays, does he then fight it? Does he try and get an injunction in court to get a stay to not have it start until it's heard in court? I don't know. But, we heard Jerry Jones just adamantly say, he's read everything, and he sees no instance of domestic violence. And as Nick tweets in, Jerry Jones, the same owner who released Lucky Whitehead before the facts were known about his case, which is something they handled poorly. Even if they said there were other things involved with Lucky, that was the straw that broke the camel's back. Was the arrest that he was misidentified for, and the Cowboys cut him anyway and then handled it so poorly after that on how they talked about it. It was ridiculous. Well, Greeny, we're halfway through another baseball season, and we're really seeing some players who stand out as winners.
Kind of like business travelers who win at business by staying at La Quinta Inns and Suites.
That's because you can put your La Quinta Returns loyalty points to work on the spot with instant free nights.
Just drive up with no reservation and instantly redeem points for a free night that same night simply by using the La Quinta app.
It's like hitting a grand slam
with an app instead of a bat.
Well played.
Prepare to win at business by learning more about instant free nights and check out the summer rates at lq.com.
Hey everyone, Mike Golick here. Support for Mike and Mike podcast comes from our friends at Rocket Mortgage by Quicken Loans. Chances are you're confident when it comes to your work, your hobbies, your life. Rocket Mortgage gives you that same level of confidence when it comes to buying a home or refinancing your existing home loan. With Rocket Mortgage, you can apply simply and understand fully so you can mortgage confidently. To get started, go to rocketmortgage.com/Mikes. Equal housing lender, licensed in all 50 states, NMLSconsumeraccess.org number 3030.
He's here. He's awake in the midst of hour number 13 of the Fantasy Football Marathon. He is our very own Adam Schefter. We affectionately know him as Shefty. And he's how able are you during these 28 hours of awakeness to keep up with all of the comings and goings around the National Football League? I'm sure you got the text working constantly.
Nothing changes. Nothing changes. It's the same exact thing as always. A little less sleep, but honestly, feel great.
No one's feeling sorry for you, right?
I'm not asking for anybody to feel sorry for me.
I know you're not. I know you're not, but that's how it works, man, right? Yeah. You just have to keep on going on.
We've spent a lot of time this morning already on Zeke Elliott. Let's get to a couple of other football situations around the league that will have both fantasy ramifications and those of other sorts. We saw a very impressive debut, I thought, from Deshaun Watson in his first appearance with the Houston Texans in the preseason game. What are you hearing from people close to that situation about how that quarterback situation is likely to play out in the battle to be the starter?
There is no rush to anoint Deshaun Watson as the starting quarterback, and he took some reps with the first team offense in practice yesterday, but I think that was more accidental and the way the practice went as much as anything else. At some point, look, everybody knows he's the quarterback of the Texans' future. He's the guy they traded up to get. He's the guy they identified as the quarterback of the future. The fact of the matter is, Tom Savage has got experience in that offense. Barring something unforeseen, he's going to open the season as the starting quarterback for the Texans. The question is, he's only played 2 NFL games. He's struggled with health throughout his entire career. There's no assurance he's going to stay healthy now. And the Texans believe that if anything were to happen to him, they have a more than capable replacement. At some point in time, they'll go to Deshaun Watson, we would think. But Tom Savage is slated to open the season right now.
How about the rise it's been one game, certainly in the minds of the fans in Chicago, of Mitchell Trubisky. Yeah. You have Glennon, who played poorly, and that adds to it that Glennon didn't play well. Sanchez is behind Glennon, and then it was Mitch. Sanchez gets nicked up, so that means Mitch will start getting more reps that way. So, and Fox obviously absolutely correct in saying the depth chart doesn't change after the one game. But where do you see this thing going for a guy in Trubisky who everybody said, man, does he need a redshirt year?
Here's the situation. I think it's similar in all these places that have young rookie quarterbacks that teams invested first-round picks in. We could talk about Houston and Deshaun Watson. We could talk about Chicago and Mitchell Trubisky. We could talk about Kansas City and Patrick Mahomes. Bottom line is I think these teams, all of them, want to go with the established incumbent veteran guy. And it's up to the rookie to wrestle that job away. We saw something similar in Seattle a few years back when the Seahawks went out and signed Matt Flynn during free agency. And Russell Wilson came on and lit it up game after game in the preseason to the point where in the third preseason game, I believe they played the Chiefs on a Friday night, you walked away, you said, there's no way they can't start the guy. They just have to start him because he's earned it and he's played his way into that starting job. That's what one of these young rookie quarterbacks would have to do. And I think right now, Glennon is the starting quarterback in Chicago. They plan for him to continue to be the starting quarterback in Chicago. But if Trubisky strung together 4 of those games in the preseason, it's going to be hard to keep him on the bench. You don't want to put him in there. You don't want to put him out there before he's ready. But the fact of the matter is if he earns that job and plays his way into it, it's going to be tough to deny it to him.
Yeah, the fans are all excited about it to the point that John Fox said the first time we threw Tim Tebow out there in Denver, it was pretty similar. That brought quite a lot of attention. So he's comparing the hype in Chicago right now to Tebow. The big difference, and I know you know this, but for the audience that doesn't, Russell Wilson played a ton in college. That's a guy who went from NC State. He went to Wisconsin. He played an extra year. He played a ton in college. So he was so much more prepared, you would think, than a guy like Trubisky, who basically played one season in college.
13 starts, I believe, is what he had at North Carolina.
So those situations, I know you weren't comparing it in that regard, but those situations would not seem comparable. I think it would be a huge mistake to rush Trubisky out there. Another thing we're hearing more and more of is Roger Goodell, who made these comments on our show. We go back and find it. It's got to be 5 or 6 years ago, about how the quality of what they put on the field for preseason games just doesn't stack up to what the fans should be allowed to expect. You've got Bill Belichick now sitting 40 guys. Because
every team's doing it seems like.
Because they're playing them in these scrimmages. So it's a two-part question. Will that ultimately lead to fewer preseason games? And does fewer preseason games automatically have to mean additional regular season games?
Well, I think they're definitely determined to cut the preseason. Look, it's cut now in the sense that in the fourth preseason game, nobody plays any regulars anyway. So it's really a 3-game preseason. And if you go to the first one, many teams don't play many of the starters, or they play their starters for a series or 2. So we're down to 2 preseason games, which is probably the right number. Maybe. Now you have a situation is what do you do with that spare time when you cut it? I guess you could add on to the regular season. I don't see it going that way necessarily right now. I can see them expanding the postseason before they expand the regular season because there's so much money. If they could add another postseason opponent, more postseason games to the slate, to me that's the way it would make sense. But I don't know that we're close to that right now. Maybe we get there, maybe we don't, but it's only a matter of time before
they're not hand in hand, is what you're saying. Knocking down preseason, adding regular season.
No. I think knocking down the preseason and adding to the postseason is more likely than the regular season.
I hope everyone was, by the way, as entertained as I was watching Schefter getting another call on the phone we couldn't see. He's got the phone sitting on the table. Then I could see he got all of a sudden jittery, and I realized now because something was buzzing in his pocket, he pulls out the other phone and puts it down on the table.
It's special, isn't it? Let's look at some injury
something you need there, by the way? We got big news there?
No, nothing.
All good.
Laundry list, grocery list, you got something working like that? Okay, something like that.
Quarterbacks, Joe Flacco, Andrew Luck, each of those on where we are.
Listen, Joe Flacco didn't play in the preseason. And talking to the Ravens last week, they did not sound concerned one bit. They feel like it's just precautionary. They're being smart with Flacco. Look, it bears watching. Backs are tricky. You never know. But they don't sound concerned. Andrew Luck, we heard Jim Irsay sound off over the weekend saying that he thinks that Andrew Luck will be ready, if not for the start of the season, very early in the season. So that gives you a read into when they expect Luck to be ready. Doesn't mean he's out there for the opener against the Los Angeles Rams, but if he misses that game, and he might not, but if he were, it doesn't sound like he'd miss much time beyond that. The fact of the matter is, I think that they feel pretty good. The general manager, Chris Ballard, said over the weekend that Andrew Luck has more strength in his shoulder today than he did at this time last year. So, again, I think the signs are encouraging right now, but they still don't have clarity as to when he'll be ready to go.
And a young guy, a rookie in the case of Leonard Fournette, who I'm sure they're going to want to tote the rock a lot this year with the foot injury. It looks like he's going to sit out this next preseason game, but they don't seem overly concerned at this point.
I was told it's not a big deal. Now, again, he's had some foot injuries in the past, so I think in the back of your mind you wonder if it is a big deal. But everybody involved says it is not a big deal, so we'll take everybody at their word, and we'll see how this transpires. And I think that they're just being smart with Leonard Fournette in the preseason.
Schefter's with us in studio with the Straight Talk, brought to you by Straight Talk Wireless, best phones, best networks, no contracts. He is, of course, a huge part of our fantasy football marathon. We're in the midst of hour number 13. It's presented by DraftKings. So you're just kind of getting warmed up here as you got 15 hours ahead of you. Give everyone a sense, because you've become ubiquitous. I mean, everyone who watches ESPN knows Schefter. Just give us a sense of what this day is like. What do you have in mind? How you've been preparing for this? What are you looking at as the day continues?
You know, this day is morphing slowly, gradually, incrementally into one of those days that you mark on your NFL calendar, like the first day of the regular season or the first day of free agency or the first day of the NFL draft. Because you come in here last night, I got to the campus about 4 o'clock in the afternoon, and you just felt like something's different. It's a big day, and it's a fun day. And by the end of it, when we do a show tonight, we do a mock draft. They're bringing all sorts of people in to do drafting. You're running on fumes, and you're a little bit loopy and giddy. And last year it was a laugh fest. Mike was hysterical last year. Everybody was very funny, and it becomes almost like a celebration, a party. And once you get through this day and yesterday together, you know that no matter how little you sleep any other day the rest of the year, it will not match what you went through during this 28-hour period.
Which means you're going to have to basically have your draft board set while you're still coherent.
That's
not
fun.
Loopy, right?
That's
so
fun.
You'll get it all set before it actually starts.
They're picking. I think we're just there advising and
and
commenting and critiquing.
Remember last year, Bobby
good.
Flay had the number one pick. The chef comes into our world, takes David Johnson. We mock the heck out of him, and he was great. It was great.
Well, I will tell you, and I think you were part of it. I think they did like a little mockumentary.
Yes, they did. I was part of it. Yeah.
Me too.
Yeah.
And I haven't seen it yet, but I know it's going to be really good.
Yeah.
And they're going to play it tonight.
Yeah, good.
And they're going to look back on the decision, Bobby Flay's decision, to go David Johnson when everybody mocked him over that.
We crushed him for it.
Yeah, I did a little interview. You did a little interview. A couple of people did some interviews. And, again, I cannot wait to see the final product of that.
He is Schefter. He's almost halfway home as we are in the midst of ESPN's fantasy football marathon. And, of course, as news breaks, we'll get it from him from one of his two phones.
Guys don't really talk about antiperspirant. Despite that, 91% of Dove Men Plus Care users recommend it. Here's what they said.
It blocks the, perspiration, I think is the fancy word. It's comfortable. It smells nice. My girl likes the smell. Well, it's hard. I think it's quite masculine. My underarms aren't the worst thing at the gym. It's kind of like the Hoover Dam for my armpits, I guess.
Dove Men Plus Care Antiperspirant. Tough on sweat, not on skin.
Mike and Mike reminding you, if you want to get in touch with us, tweet us at Mike and Mike through the 1-800-Flowers.com Twitter feed. Nothing makes a summer, birthday, or anniversary more magical than 1-800-Flowers.com. And right now, when you order a dozen multicolored roses for just $29.99, you're going to get another dozen absolutely free. Just go to 1-800-Flowers.com/ESPN.
We have a ton of that Twitter reaction for you here, including from Reb McDaniel, who tweets, players shouldn't be getting kicked out of practice for fighting. It's football. Quit getting so soft. They have passion. Reb, I just don't understand what you're talking about. There's nothing soft about football. The notion that people start equating these fights that you guys get into to toughness, that has nothing to do with it.
I agree with that. I don't think it's about it. It's about practices can get hot. You can get tired of it. And you just kind of lose your temper.
What better way
to
to settle a dispute between two people than to start
throwing
punches at a person wearing a helmet?
Me and my brothers used to fight every now and then. It can be a bonding moment as well. We can fight with each other, but nobody else better mess with us. There's something to it. I know you don't understand it, and I get it, but I just think it goes a little far with. I understand not wanting melees every single play. I get it, but to toss somebody from a practice, sorry. I mean, if they get in a fight after you say, "Hey, next fight you're out of practice," and they keep going, all right. But, it's the rule. I'm talking about in Bill Belichick. It's a rule there. And a couple players got tossed for fighting. It's a rule. You got to know the rule. Kyle Long got thrown out of a practice for the Bears for a couple of fights there. I just see it a little differently. It's all I can tell you.
Aaron tweets, Greeny is right. That's what makes the Patriots different and special. I genuinely believe he's a step ahead on that. Angela tweets at you, Golick, you're not a fan of getting booted from practice for fighting because you came from a Buddy Ryan defense.
I don't think there's any doubt that had something to do with it. I came from that kind of an upbringing as well. I understand that. I mean, again, my dad, one of the things he told me, when you go to a new situation, find the biggest guy and get in a fight. I mean, so yes, I do come from that. And while I think that's overboard. It can be overboard. I completely agree with that. A couple of skirmishes here and there, I'm sorry, I don't have an issue with it.
But that was to try and get yourself noticed, right? That was so
right,
someone would
different.
notice you.
And then that was, to me, in Philly, while I enjoyed it because I didn't mind scrapping, there were too many. I mean, there was a fight almost after every play in one-on-one or a 9-on-7. I have great, I'll have to tell the great training camp story of the Ron Heller, Jerome Brown fight.
We got to gather around the campfire for that one.
And the conversation between Jerome Brown and Ron Solt during one-on-one about what they were going to go get from their cars. And I mean, it doesn't need to be that. I understand. And it did get to a point in Philly where the way to stop it, it was the right way to stop it. It was, hey, because once you get in a fight, you jump in and help your side of the ball. If when we were scrimmaging another team, like when we'd scrimmage the Cleveland Browns out in London before we played them, you defend your team when there's fights, running across the field or whatever for fights. What happened in Philly is what we do is if there got to be too many of them, and it does waste time when there can be too many of them, I get it, is if there's another fight, you just say the two people that are fight, you're the only ones that fight. Nobody can jump in, and you learn very quickly how tired you get if it's a one-on-one fight, and then you have to go back and start plays again. So there is an overboard to it. I get it, and I was involved in some of that. But a couple of skirmishes here and there, I don't have an issue with. So that's just my thought.
You are listening to hour number 13 of the Fantasy Football Marathon, which is presented by DraftKings. We are Mike and Mike. We're with you on television on ESPN this morning. One of the conversations that we have here over the years that has made you the angriest is anytime there's a really, really, really bad team in the NFL, as the Browns were a year ago, as the Jets project to be this year, we will ask aloud the question, could Alabama beat them?
Right.
Could Ohio State beat them? Well, and you always get crazy. You get crazy at the very notion of
it's a ridiculous thought process.
Well, then you need to yell at Leonard Fournette. So Leonard Fournette, the star rookie out of LSU for the Jacksonville Jaguars, caused a stir last week when he said the transition from college to the NFL was, quote, really easy because he played in the SEC. And guess what? A lot of his teammates in Jacksonville are backing him up. They agree, including T.J. Yeldon from Alabama, who said, what did I say?
No, I'm just saying the players that are backing him up are guys who played in the SEC as well.
He's basically saying that life in the SEC isn't all that different from life in the NFL. T.J. Yeldon said, I feel like he was kind of right. Playing in the SEC, the game speeds up. It's faster. It's kind of like the NFL. The NFL is a tad bit faster. I get where he's coming from with that comment. Mike, do you think that's hyperbole, or do you think that this is an accurate
thought? I mean, first from Leonard Fournette, it might be a little early. T.J. Yeldon's been in the league a few years, so, but if you're talking about a young guy, if Zeke Elliott came out at the end of this year after being Rookie of the Year and said, you know what, I didn't find the transition that difficult, at least he has some credence to it, right? He went out and he played for the season. Leonard Fournette has had one practice a day, and he's had a few carries in a preseason game. He hasn't seen the regular season yet, and again, starters all the time, I think, to know that. But listen, I'm not in their shoes. The SEC, we all feel, is the best conference in the land. I know ACC will yell about that and Big Ten will yell about that. But we all, you know where you can find it. Look at the draft every year. Where do a lot of the NFL players, what conference leads? It's the SEC, right?
Sure.
These guys seem to be most prepared for the NFL. When no matter how that team does, you see, no matter how certain teams do in the SEC, you see players from SEC teams going in the draft. I mean, the proof is right there. So they seem most ready for the NFL. So I can't sit here and say the transition for me, that is without question the biggest difference is the speed of the game. I wasn't necessarily ever a fast guy. The speed of the game was way different for me.
It's more that than the power. It's more that than just the people being physically stronger.
Yeah, well, I mean, they're that, but you learn technique can take care of a lot of that. A lot of guys were stronger than me, but I could beat them because of technique and leverage. It's the speed of the game that really was eye-opening. And these guys, listen, I don't have much of a problem with it. Hearing it from a young guy who hasn't played in a regular season game might seem a little much, but they come from one hell of a conference that's producing a whole lot of NFL players.
Field Yates, Schefter and Barry and Frank Caliendo still to come. Mike and Mike.